It's time to get ready for the Buffalo Bills Week 9 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. Time to get ready for this game on Sunday. The Bills back at home in Week 9 to host the Miami Dolphins. The game will be played on Sunday, November 3rd. 1 p.m. Eastern time at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. The game will be broadcasted on CBS. Kevin Harlan on the play-by-play. Trent Green is the game analyst. Melanie Collins is the sideline reporter. This will be the 123rd all-time meeting between the Bills and Dolphins. And the Bills have a 59-62-1 record all-time against Miami. The success recently has been notable. The Bills have won the last 5 and 14 of the last 16, and the Bills have been especially good at home against Miami, where the Dolphins haven't won in Orchard Park since 2016. The Bills enter this game at 6-2, first place in the AFC East. The Miami Dolphins are 2-5. They sit at third after the Jets won on Thursday Night Football. So far, the story of the Dolphins this year is they beat the Jaguars in Week 1. Then they lost 3 in a row. They lose to the Bills in Week 2. Of course, that's when Tua goes down with the concussion and he misses the next 4 games. And so they drop to Seattle. They drop to Tennessee. They beat the Patriots. Then they have their bye week. Out of the bye week, they lose to the Colts. Last week, they lose to the Cardinals in Miami, and now they are on the road in Buffalo. Of course, again, Tua played Week 1. He played last week, and he played until he got injured against the Bills. Head coach of the Miami Dolphins, Mike McDaniel, 41 years old. This is his 3rd season with the Dolphins. 22-19 is the mark so far for McDaniel. Of course, the quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, 26 years old, was the number 5 overall pick in 2020 out of Alabama by the Miami Dolphins. 6'1", 225 pounds. So far, the Dolphins are 33-21 when Tua is their starter. In 2024, he's completing 68% of his passes, 239 passing yards per game, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a passer rating of 86.1. Let's get into his metrics. So far this year, he is minus .01 EPA, which is expected points added per dropback. That is 18th in the NFL. He throws the ball deep 10% of the time, which means 20 yards or more down the field. That's 23rd. On those deep throws, Tua is 4 for 10, 194 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The next 3 numbers right here, I think, tell the story of Tua and tell the story of this Miami Dolphins passing offense. Tua is number 1 in the NFL in percentage of yards that are after the catch. 70% of Tua's passing yards this season come after the catch. He throws the ball to his first read 77% of the time. Number 1 in the NFL. His average time to throw, 2.2 seconds. Number 1 in the NFL. Gets the ball out quick to his first read, and there's a lot of yards after catch. That's the style of offense and quarterbacking that Tua has embraced this season, as their vertical elements haven't been there to the degree that I'm sure they'd like. Tua throws a catchable ball a lot of times, 80% of the time. That's fourth highest in the NFL. He's off target only 12% of the time. That's 32nd. Turnover-worthy throw rate is 4%. That's very high at 27th. Drop rate is 5%, which is 25th. They've definitely had their issues with drops this season. Tua's pressured 21% of the time, which is the lowest of the NFL, which ties back to the average time to throw at 2.2 seconds. It's going to be tough to get pressure on a quarterback that consistently gets the ball out that quickly. They run a good bit of play action. 32% of dropbacks are play action. That's sixth highest in the NFL. Tua is 18th in EPA per dropback with play action. Heavy screen team as well. 25% of plays are screens. They're effective for them. 7.4 yards per attempt on screen plays. Fifth highest in the NFL. Now, Tua's not much of a runner, but he will, as we know. He has 6 rushes for 41 yards this season. I don't think it's a big part of his game, but he's selective with it, and he can, get a little chunk every now and then. So Tua's obviously statistically not having as good of a season as he did last year or the previous year. And he's only played 2.5 games through this point in the year. But I think in his absence, the 4 games that he missed, Tua's a flawed quarterback. He's got his own issues. He's got his own shortcomings. But he means a lot to this operation. They were dreadful without Tua, and that includes with Skylar Thompson, their backup quarterback, who was year 3 in the system, and the guy just couldn't function. And so this offense is obviously a lot better when he's part of the mix, and we've seen it be extremely productive with him as part of the mix. It's a offense that's based on timing. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of communication, a lot of anticipatory throws, and Tua is the straw that stirs the drink here. It was an absolute disaster without him. And so, again, Tua is a flawed quarterback, but their overall story of the season is obviously impacted because of Skylar Thompson, and then they're signing Tyler Huntley off the street, playing him like 3 days later. He's been getting injured during games, and they're bringing in Tim Boyle. It's been a tough scene. And obviously this is his second game back from the concussion, and it'll be tough. It's on the road, obviously, and I think that offense is typically different on the road, but certainly not as bad as they were during that stretch when Tua wasn't available. And so this is the next test. It feels like a very important game for Miami. They do sit at 2-5, but the AFC is very much not what a lot of people thought. There's only 8 teams. There's only 8 teams in the entire conference within a game of 500. And so you think about those wild card spots, the 6, the 7 seed, and they're wide open. And so on one hand, it feels like Miami's kind of out of it at 2-5, but somebody's got to be the 6 and the 7 seed. Who's going to rally and do it? I think that's going to be a fun storyline to watch throughout the rest of the year. And for Miami, if it's going to happen, they're going to have to go get this win on the road. All right, we'll talk more about the Miami offense on the other side of it and the Bills' keys defensively against it. Be sure to stick with me. There's nothing quite like being at the stadium. I love going and seeing Josh Allen play live. If you want to do that, then you got to check out Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. Look, getting tickets can be stressful, but it's not if you have Game Time. The app is awesome. It's easy to navigate. You can get flash deals. They give you a seat view from your, a picture from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue. Whenever you buy a ticket, it goes straight to your phone as opposed to having to dig through emails to find it. And they give you great deals on last-minute tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today What time is it? It's game time. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing overtime game, which is why they've created Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and last to leave. We see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you're rooting for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your favorite jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. The offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins is Frank Smith. He's 43 years old. It's his third season in Miami. However, Mike McDaniel is the play caller for this football team, their head coach. Let's talk about the Dolphins' metrics on offense, and they are very poor this year. 32nd in scoring. They were number 2 last year. 32nd in scoring, 13.9 points per game so far. They throw it 53% of the time. That's 21st in terms of frequency. They run it 47% of the time, which is 12th highest in terms of frequency. In terms of EPA per play on offense, they're 29th, 27th in EPA per pass, 31st in EPA per rush. They are getting pretty good yards yards before contact, 2.17 yards before contact per run, 10th highest in the NFL. They're converting 39% of their third downs. That's 18th. They've been very poor in the red zone, only scoring touchdowns 44% of the time, 29th in the NFL. Let's talk about their personnel outside of Tua. His wide receivers, Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle. Obviously, the production has not been there for those players this year. Certainly extremely potent wide receivers. They're expensive wide receivers. Tyreek Hill is $30 million a season. Jaylen Waddle is $28 million a season. They're electric, right? They can win down the field. They can win with the ball in their hands. And part of the reason that Tua is able to get the ball out of his hands so quickly is these guys can get to their spots so quickly. And so, obviously disrupting them as much as you can is very important. Potent players, for sure. Now, what's been interesting for Miami is they haven't been able to get a third receiver going at all in terms of wide receivers. Jonnu Smith, the tight end's having a good year, but outside of Hill and Waddle at receiver, it's been pretty much nothing. I think they'd like their number 3 receiver to be Odell Beckham Jr., who they signed. He hasn't even played this year, I'm pretty sure. I mean, he's been a non-factor. River Craycraft has been a player they've mixed in the past. He's been injured. Braxton Berrios is an option. He tore his ACL a few weeks ago. He's out. And so the receiver with the third amount of catches on this team is Malik Washington, who has 3. So they really have not been able to get a third receiver going. At tight end, Jonnu Smith, the signing this past free agency from the Falcons, he's been a pretty good player for them. 26 catches, 314 yards through 7 games. They've certainly prioritized getting him the ball a little bit. And then they have their backup tight ends, Durham Smythe, who's been a long-time fixture for them. Tanner Connor's been worked in lately. Julian Hill's an important blocker for them. We'll see if he's going to be available this week. So they'll play those tight ends. They throw it mostly to Jonnu Smith, but they'll mix in these other guys as blockers as they run their wide zone. They run their crack toss run plays. At running back, Devon Achane's the name here. Small, but very speedy player. They're throwing the ball to him quite a bit this year as well. So he's a multifaceted back. And Raheem Mostert, who's coming off of a big-time season last year. I think he had like the Dolphins record for rushing touchdowns. He's been injured a little bit. Came back last week against Arizona. And if I'm not mistaken, Achane had 10 carries and Mostert had 9 carries. So it looks like it's kind of a split situation between those two. They got a young player that they drafted, Jalen Wright, who I think will eventually replace Raheem Mostert. They haven't given him many opportunities this year, but he's been flashy. So If they work him in, I'm not really sure. If one of those guys gets injured, I'm sure Jalen Wright will get more opportunity. They do have a fullback in Alec Ingold, who they're not afraid to give the ball to offensively this year, so you got to be mindful of that. When it comes to order of weapons in the passing game in terms of targets, Tyreek Hill leads this team with 51, even though he said on social media this week that he's just a blocker now. Jaylen Waddle, 36. Devon Achane, 34. Jonnu Smith, 34. Julian Hill, 10. So you can see it's basically Hill, Waddle, Achane, Smith, and then they have not really established a single other player in the passing game in a meaningful capacity. The offensive line here, obviously the Dolphins face a lot of criticism for their offensive line and just how they invest and how they don't invest in this group. I think this group has benefited this year from being healthy. Last year, they were just injured a ton. And there's been a few situations where somebody had a spot start, but for the most part, they've seen a lot more health for this group, and I think it's played a lot better, particularly in run blocking. Now, if you have to get these guys into a drop-back passing situation and they have to take normal pass sets and Tua just can't get the ball out of his hands in 2 seconds, they're going to struggle a little bit. But if they can stay within their rhythm, within their script, they're going to be pretty effective with how they can get the ball out quick, and these guys can do just enough. But if you can get them into a drop-back passing game, like in the second half against them in week 2, you can really tee off and create a lot of problems. So let's talk about the personnel at left tackle. Teron Armstead, he's healthy right now. I thought he had a down year last year, but I think this year he's kind of coming back into form a little bit. Their left guard is Robert Jones. I look at Robert Jones as more of a backup type player. The Bills have had some success kind of working through him throughout the years. Their center is Aaron Brewer. He's a new center for them this year, coming over from Tennessee. He's small, like one of the smallest offensive linemen you'll ever see, but he's extremely athletic. He's having a good season. He's a good fit for the scheme. Their right guard is Liam Eichenberg, who's been a very inconsistent player, mostly underwhelming. I think he's had some positive momentum this year as he's been a little bit more healthy. He's their right guard, but certainly a matchup I think the Bills should be able to take advantage of. Then their right tackle is Austin Jackson, who certainly is a good run blocker and a good short setter in the pass game. But if you have to get him into some deeper pass sets, I think you can have him a little bit. So what are my keys for the Bills on defense against this offense? Number one is you got to heat up Tua. Yes, he gets the ball out of his hands quickly, but when you can get pressure on him, boy, the numbers are bad for him. He's not a quarterback that does well under pressure. And being creative with how you rush him, kind of anticipating where his eyes are going to be. He wants to go to that first read. He wants to get the ball out quick. How do you attack the pocket in the right places to get that quick pressure, but also get yourself in his line of sight so that you force him to work deeper into the snap? So heat him up. Number two is you got to tighten the screws situationally, which is exactly what this Bills defense is built to do. But the Dolphins have been very poor situationally. They're 29th in red zone touchdown percentage. They're 18th in third down conversion percentage. And they're dead last in fourth down conversion percentage. And they went for it 15 times in 7 games. They're 2 for 15 on fourth down. So you got to win those possession downs and then limit them to field goals, not touchdowns, when they get down to the red zone. And the thing about playing Miami is they're going to make some annoying plays. I always say this when they play the Dolphins. They're going to get the ball to Tyreek. They're going to get the ball to Jaylen Waddle. And they'll dump it down to Jonnu Smith. They're going to get some yards. Make them keep executing. That's the key. They have some explosive playmakers, even in the run game. Like, they can get some explosive runs. But if you just force them to continue to execute, this is a very mistake-prone offense. They are a team that, it's snap issues. It's getting lined up, illegal shifts, illegal procedures, false starts. Like, eventually they get behind the sticks. And if you can force them to just keep executing, don't let them have 2-play 70-yard drives. That cannot happen. If they're going to score, they got to stack play after play after play. And Miami is a team that's proven under Mike McDaniel over the last 3 years that they have a hard time being consistent with their ability to sustain play after play after play without making their own mistakes. Invite them to make those mistakes, and typically they fall in line. Don't let them score one play, a bomb to Tyreek Hill for 80 yards. Make them continue to execute. Eventually they get behind the sticks or make a mistake and give you the ball. Number 3 is you got to be disciplined with your run D. This is an offensive line that I think is run blocking well. They've got explosive running backs, and they've run the ball well against the Bills. They're going to challenge you with wide zone. They're going to challenge you with that crack toss play. They're going to wham block. They're going to be very creative with how they introduce gaps that you weren't expected. They have these little short poles with their tight ends, or they might line up Alec Ingold, kind of offset and pull them across a formation. In some ways, a little bit of what Baltimore will do, or what Baltimore did in that game against the Bills. So your run D has to be disciplined this week and be ready for a lot of variety in how they scheme the run. I mean, Mike McDaniel, the reason he's the head coach of this team is he was the run game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. He's got creative run schemes. You got to be ready to fit the run. Obviously, the Bills have seen this a good amount. This is not a foreign situation to them. But again, it's one of those run schemes that you got to play it a little bit different. You got to be aware of different keys, false keys, and a lot of different short pulls and how they stress you horizontally with their blocking schemes. All right, folks, on the other side of it, we're talking about the Dolphins defense and what the Bills offense needs to do against it. Be sure to stick with me. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, gives you everything you need in one place to live bet on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins is Anthony Weaver, 44 years old. He's the third defensive coordinator in as many seasons with Mike McDaniel. Spent the last 3 years with the Ravens as their defensive line coach and their assistant head coach. He been a defensive line coach in the NFL for a while. Metrically, they're allowing 22.4 points per game. That's 16th in the NFL. They're 16th in EPA per play, 19th in EPA per pass, 9th in EPA per rush. They're good on third down. They only give up a third down conversion 31% of the time. Number 2 in the NFL. They're 61% in the red zone giving up touchdowns, which is not quite as good. That's 22nd in the NFL. Personnel-wise, at defensive end, they're edge rushers. Obviously, Jalen Phillips injured, out for the year. Bradley Chubb, who was injured last season, not back yet from his knee injury. So they don't have their two main guys at edge rusher. Instead, it's been Tyus Bowser. Tyus Bowser's almost 30 years old. He's 29. He started the year with the Seahawks, has since come over to Miami, missed all of 2023, and was with Baltimore. So obviously, Coach Weaver has some familiarity with him from his time back in Baltimore. So he's been like an okay edge rusher for a while with Baltimore. Injury in 2023, and he's bouncing around so far this year. Then Emmanuel Ogbah, who's kind of had his moments in the NFL. I think he doesn't quite have the juice and pop as he had earlier in his career. He has to play a good bit of snaps. Calais Campbell, ageless, right? He's in his late 30s. That guy's still playing at a high level. He's probably their best player up front. And he plays inside and outside. Good player. Then Chop Robinson, their first-round pick, he's playing a lot. And he's not quite been effective to this point. Very explosive player, but his rush plan, he's still figuring it out. So no Chubb, no Phillips. They lean into Tyus Bowser, Emmanuel Ogbah, Calais Campbell, Chop Robinson. Their main interior players, Zach Sealer, their best player there, got poked in the eye last week. He missed last week's game, and as of the recording of this podcast, he didn't practice on Wednesday or Thursday. It doesn't feel like he's going to be available this week, and that's a big loss for Miami. So with him out, they lean into Deshaun Hand, who's bounced around a bit in the NFL. He was kind of flashy last week against Arizona, but for the most part, he's kind of been an underwhelming player. Benito Jones, who's a big old nose tackle. Brandon Peely, Neil Farrell. I think those are like replacement level players. So certainly missing something here with Zach Sealer out of the mix. At linebacker, Jordan Brooks, he's been pretty good for them. He's a good coverage player, size, athleticism. He's was a free agent signing. I think he looks like an answer for them. His running mate, David Long, not having a good season. Dreadful season, honestly. Run fits have been terrible. And he's been a lot better throughout his career, but this has not been a good season for him. At corner, Kendall Fuller, good NFL starter. Jalen Ramsey, obviously, he's exceptional. He's playing a lot in the slot. And they, of course, have Kader Kohou. We'll see if he can go. I think he's been injured. And then last week they had to play Cam Smith, their second-round pick from last year, really his first opportunity to play, and he struggled. So we'll see if Kohou can go, but if he can go, it'll be Fuller, Kohou, and Ramsey, but then I think you'll also see Cam Smith. That'll be that mix at corner. I think, obviously, Ramsey and Fuller are good players. Smith and Kohou are guys you can go after. At safety, Jordan Poyer, not having a good season at all. Javon Holland is his running mate. He's been injured like all season long. Not sure if he's going to be able to go. Obviously, when he's available, he's a good starter. And then Marcus May, if Holland can't go, Marcus May, a veteran, bouncing around later in his career, he'd probably be the guy that would run next to Poyer. So what are the keys for the Bills' offense against this defense? I think you got to be aggressive early. You got to go into the Seattle script. The Bills came out against Seattle and leaned into their passing offense. And that allowed them to move the ball, a lot of success, scored points early, and then you kind of became more two-dimensional, and then, of course, you close out the game with your run game. I think that's the script against Miami. This is the type of team that you want to get on top of early. I think the biggest issue with the Miami Dolphins against the Bills have been how they've evolved with game scripts. Mike McDaniel, when he's behind, he's been behind a good bit against the Bills, respectfully. It's like he thinks he can score 10 points on one play. And he abandons the run, and he gets into this drop-back passing game. And I think you've got to force him into his own bad tendencies. Yeah, it's like he chases it too early and gets out of their plan. You can get him out of his plan, and that's a good thing. Be aggressive, score those points early, throw the ball early, close it out with the run game. Number 2 is keep Josh Allen clean and hunt. This pass rush has not been very effective. The Bills' pass blocking is very effective. One of the best pass blocking offensive lines in the league. Keep it that way and use that as opportunities to hunt. Take advantage of your matchups. Number 3 for me is your matchups. Go after Cam Smith if he's out there. Go after Kader Kohou if he's out there. If Jordan Poyer's ISO'd one-on-one against Kincaid, go after it. You got some good matchup opportunities here to take advantage of. So be aggressive early with the passing game. Keep Josh Allen clean and hunt, and then win those matchups. Go after those matchups. You should be able to get some wins there. Special teams, their kicker is Jason Sanders, been their kicker since 2018. Perfect on extra points this year, 7 of 7. 12 of 16 on field goals. That's 75%. He's an 83% kicker for his career. Streaky, has his moments, but certainly not a guy that you feel like is automatic. They have 34% of their kickoffs returned against them. That's 14th in frequency. So they are not like an every single time touchback team. Their punter is Jake Bailey, 16th this season in EPA per punt. I think he's been an NFL punter for, I don't know, probably 7-8 years at this point. Probably about as average as they come. Then the return situation's interesting because they'd like it to be Braxton Berrios, as I mentioned. torn ACL. He's not available. So what they did last week is their kick returner is Dwayne Eskridge. And he's done that for a number of years in the NFL. He's never had a ton of production, but he's experienced doing that. So he'll be their kick returner. Their punt returner is Malik Washington, which is fascinating because Malik Washington never was a punt returner in college, and he's a rookie. Day 3 pick out of Virginia. Very skilled player in terms of yards after catch, but not a guy that's had a lot of experience. When I say a lot, he's had 2 since coming to, I don't know what he did in high school, but throughout college and so far as a rookie, 2 punt returns in his life. You feel like that could be an opportunity. Force him to field some punts. Hopefully you don't have to punt, but if you do, right, force this guy inexperienced on the road in Buffalo, maybe a little wind, could be a chance to get him off. So there you have it. That's the Dolphins. A lot on the line for them. A lot on the line. I think in some ways, this is going to be an empty the bag type situation for them. If it's going to happen for Miami, 2-6 is probably too far of a hole for them to fall into. And so I'd expect an honest effort for them. I expect them to kind of empty the bag a little bit and see if they can't steal a win on the road. They got to have it. And that doesn't mean I'm sure they're going to try really hard. So will the Bills, right? The Bills aren't looking past anybody. Good teams, it doesn't matter who the opponent is, they prepare and execute. Bills are back at home again. This is the 9th game of the year. Was it 6 of the first 8 on the road? 5 of the first 8 on the road? And Bills are going to be happy to be back at home. And that's what's ahead of them, an opportunity to get to 7-2 before you face the Colts next week. All right, folks, that's it. We have one more conversation for you. Of course, my final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble about the injuries and my 5 predictions for Sunday. That's coming your way for our last conversation before the game on Sunday. Don't miss it. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.